Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of APB. So in this episode, a man named Robert is trying to get Gideon's attention to the point he stands in front of an ATM, shoots it with a sign like, "Oh, I want to talk to Gideon Reeves." Well, it turns out this dude, his reasoning for this is because he wanted to get Gideon's help with his current situation. Basically, he's used the APB app multiple times, but the precinct that responded to him didn't really help him out, didn't want to do anything about his circumstances. And anytime he called this particular precinct, the District 13, to talk to Gideon himself, and never really got an opportunity to really talk to Gideon, just kind of got passed over. But so this is kind of his one chance opportunity to kind of, he felt like this was his only way to get in touch with Gideon. It turns out that basically his daughter, named Maya, basically got hooked on this synthetic drug named Hightown, and it basically, she ended up in a very bad situation. I mean, she ended up getting addicted to it and everything, and it kind of ruined her life. And I forgot what the whole situation was. I think it's like she ended up in a coma, but I think she woke up and she's slowly getting better, but it's to the point like she's not the girl that she was before. The fact is that subsequently, since everything, she hasn't spoken a word since, just like it's done a number on her. And so her dad kind of went all vigilante mode, and he's basically trying to handle things on his own because, like I said, he tried the APB app and everything. No one would really help him or take this seriously, so he decided to kind of take matters in his own hand, and all it really did was get him beat up. But he did gather some information, and he wants Gideon to investigate because he sees like what Gideon is doing. For one, is like he looks at Gideon and he's inspired by Gideon. I mean, because granted, him and Gideon apparently both went to MIT or something like that. I think that's what he also referenced. The fact is too that but it's also because he sees what Gideon did. He saw what happened with, like, his best friend was murdered, and the police weren't necessarily getting results he wanted. So it's like, he's like, "Oh, you didn't stop until you got justice for your friend." And he's like, he wants justice for his little girl. Obviously, it's a very thin case in the sense of like, trying to track down like the guy behind this drug. Like there's like so much more to it. Obviously, like, Gideon kind of bases of what he sees kind of around the same thing as I guess a normal person would. Basically, the sense of like, oh, it should be easy. It's like all you got to do is follow the money to the person who, eventually you follow the monies and the drugs back to someone. But it's not that easy because there's so many middlemen involved, from someone being the watch out, someone being the watcher, someone to be the one that kind of, there's just so many people involved, and it's like the person behind it, the head honcho behind the entire situation, never actually touches the drugs. They touch the money, sure, but it's not like you can make the direct correlation because there's so many people it passes in between, and it's, you could argue it's like, oh, this and that, but it's like you can't legally make those leaps and bounds without the evidence, and if they've never touched the evidence, it's kind of like, how can you really charge them for it? So that's a big part of this. We're trying to figure out a way around that, and Gideon found a way. Obviously, powder, obviously, I forgot what the exact wording for it is. I'm sorry. Basically, the powder that basically you line it under a black light, you can see stuff. So it's like, oh, basically use something like that, except Gideon has these special goggles / glasses that kind of are augmented reality based, and then basically he can shift it so that you can see them. It's almost like having, it's not exactly like that, but I like to think of it as almost like a black light on a go, that basically where the normal eye can't see the powder, these glasses can. Which everyone at first is kind of like, really? We're in these? Okay, but they work. It is trippy, like, from a filming perspective, because I know I don't really get all into it like that. But it's so interesting because the show itself has this very unique coloring. It's got this bluish coloring to it, but the moment the glasses on, it's kind of interesting. It's like the world kind of, it's like that filter kind of on the way it's filmed and everything kind of disappears. So I just thought that was just kind of interesting, like, I don't know, it's just like a little filming thing that they did. They kind of like, because even Brent and Goss were kind of like, wow, this is kind of like trippy because everything looks so bright and vibrant, but you can see like the powder all over the place on people's hands, on like railings and stuff like that. It's like, holy crap. It's one of those situations also, it makes you go, man, you realize just how much people touch stuff just because you see it all over the place. But nevertheless, it all leads back to this dude named Marcos. and it's like, hey, they thought they got him busted. I even appreciate Gideon's device to the breach device, where it's like normally breaching is meant by just like hammering down somebody's door. It's like, no, this kind of hits, I guess, certain points to obviously just knock it off its hinges. So that was kind of cool. It's like, it looked like it hit like 3 points, and it was like, boom, the door just fell over. So that was pretty cool. But this Marcos dude, once again, never underestimate criminals. He has because they kind of looked before they leaped. They didn't look before they leaped, and it turns out that the shed that he has all the drugs and stuff in isn't actually on his property; it's on his neighbor's property. And it's like, obviously, it's a situation where no one wants to admit, like, oh yeah, like I'm part of this, or turn anyone in, because it's the type of situation that's like the moment you rat someone out, you're in big trouble. So no one's going to, even when it's people who have very passive ties to it, obviously there's going to be the people who are neck deep in all of this, who obviously won't, want to say anything. In a situation like this, obviously it never came up, but I watch enough cop shows that, you take the fall for those type of situations, because it's like, if I take the fall for it, that means my family's looked after and taken care of, because obviously if I turn on him, that means me and my family are done. So it's that type of situation. So it's beneficial for them not to say anything. And then it kind of, because it's all coincides with the whole, Scott's investigation situation, because Scott's like, yo, I can't help you. You should have paid more attention. The fact is, you were too antsy, too willing. You kind of jumped the gun on this situation. He's like, because obviously he has this big problem with Gideon, and Gideon kind of at the very beginning pointed out the fact is like, yeah, I know this has more to do with, this has to deal with the fact is that your ex-wife is working with us. Side note, her name is Teresa. I don't think I called her that in the first episode. Was it the first episode or the second episode? I think I called Murphy something else, because I think I looked it up at one point. I thought her name was something else. I don't even remember. Maybe I called her Teresa, but I get the strongest feeling like I didn't. I swear I called her something else, but I can't quite place it. I think I was like completely wrong. I don't know. Nevertheless, like, her name is Teresa. That was just kind of caught me off guard. So maybe I did before. I don't know. It was just something that was bothering me. I was like, nevertheless, which I'll give you. Even Comrade's like, yeah, I don't like the situation, but he's like, I'll admit it. We need more evidence if we want Scott to kind of turn this into a case, because the whole situation is obviously built upon what we've already been established. The fact is that the mayor's got Scott and this little unit put together to investigate the 13th. And obviously it's coming up soon where the mayor and Gideon will have a sit down about this whole situation, because it's also putting into question all their other cases. Like I brought up before, the fact is they don't handle things necessarily. Obviously, Gideon doesn't go about things the right way, because I guess because in Scott's mind he still looks at it as like Gideon's just playing, but it's like, no, Gideon's just trying. He is legitimately trying to make this place a better place. And even Conrad's like, yeah, crime's actually going down like 8% since we started doing what we were doing. And it's like, yeah, the thing is, it's such a gray area. But once again, like bringing up the chair, for example, it's like, to be fair, there hasn't been a precedent set for that. So it's like, is that really a problem? It's like, I know, from a violating your rights type of situation, and it's such a gray area. And he brings up the explosion from he's like, yeah, from like last week, in the middle of last week or something. And Gideon's like, oh, it's like, well, to be fair, that was kind of a situation on its own. It's not like that was necessarily their fault. The fact of the matter is, those guys were using explosives anyway, so it's like, you can't really even blame that on them. So, but at least in this situation, you can look at it as being like, well, at the very least, Scott is being honest. He's like, yeah, this is like, from a legal standpoint, you don't have any like sway in this situation. It's like, I'm not going to bend the rules. Yes, I get it. This is the bad guy and everything, but you should have, because they're all kind of trying to ask him like, yo, this guy's the bad guy. Don't be so uptight. We can do a little leaning. But for Scott, it's a combination. It does seem like Scott is a good guy, that he is trying to, follow the laws. Like the moment you break one law, that's just going to be, you start skating that area. It's like, then where do you draw the line? When do you stop crossing the line? So I can see it there, but at the same time, it also seems like he's doing that also just to give them a hard time too. It's like, yeah, it's not that much of a leap, especially because it's like, there's no way the guy that's 90 years old is hooking people up with this Hightown drug, but still, nevertheless. You do want to give Scott the benefit of the doubt, but you can't help but look at this situation, and no matter how much he wants to pretend like it's professional, it's like you can see like the fact is that you're putting your own personal life into this. But I'll kind of get to that in a little bit. We also had basically the guy Robert. Obviously, originally he was in jail, locked up for the whole ATM thing, but they got charges dropped and everything was going to get him released. But Gideon also had to tell him about the whole Marco situation, about how he was kind of walking free. So Robert kind of decided to kind of take matters into his own hands, kind of going vigilante style like it, and he tried to go after Marcos, but that didn't go so well. And it had led to an interesting situation too, kind of going back to the gadget situation. Is the fact is that they could alter the glasses so that it's not just like, oh, we can see the powder. It's also so we can kind of almost like it's not quite night vision goggles type of situation. They just kind of augmented it so that it kind of brightened up the, I don't know like what he did exactly to do that. And then also like it also has the potential to switch views so that basically Murphy could see what Brent was doing, because it was obviously, the whole hostage situation with but what I really liked is the fact is that like Murphy setting the gun to lethal, she sees where Brent's looking and just kind of lines it up, fires the bullet, goes through the wall and hits Marcos. I was like, that was sick, dude. I know. I was just like, that was. I don't know why, because it's just like you watch. It's kind of like from an actiony standpoint. I'm like, that's so cool, just because that seemed like something to be in an action movie. So nevertheless. So they were able to capture Marcos, which they were able to use as kind of leverage against the mayor, because it's like, oh yeah, the fact is I brought the press here and everything. The fact is that, we just took down Marcos. We got him arrested and everything. Remember, Scott, you told me to come prepared, that I'd have this meeting, and I came prepared. So it's basically like, so you can go out there and tell me like, oh, you have such a problem with the way we're doing things, and the fact is that you're going to let this guy, Marcos, a big time drug dealer who's basically, his synthetic drug has been killing a lot of people, especially younger people, then go right ahead. You could do that because it will hurt your own reputation. But it's like, or we could go out there and say like, hey, I've got your full support, which you had the mayor just kind of having to choke back everything he feels. It's just like, oh yeah, it's like, even the news report, like the lady was like, hey, isn't like, aren't you guys supposed to be having a problem? And Gideon's like, what? No. He's like, yeah, he helped out. He's like, in what way did the mayor help out? He's like, sure. In what ways didn't he help out? That's the real question. And then also brought up, so the rumors about there being kind of legal troubles with the 13th, it's like, oh, no. The mayor's playing it off. It's just kind of like, to kind of put it in a different ways. Like, I love the fact that Gideon essentially got the mayor in between a rock and a hard place. I was going to say it a different way, but I was like, that's a slightly more elegant way of saying it. And it still ends off on a conversation of like Scott and Murphy, and she's kind of like, the fact is, she's like, dude, this isn't personal, like this has nothing to do with Gideon, this is me just doing my job because I love the 13th. And he's like, oh yeah, because that's your real family, huh? He's bringing up the fact that, oh, you broke up a real family. She's like, really, want to go there? But it was kind of stopped. Obviously, this whole situation with Scott isn't done. I don't even know if this situation with the mayor is completely done. It seems like at the very least for now, they'll probably still be on the lookout waiting for them to slip up even once. Once again, I'll bring it up. There's a whole Ada situation, kind of going vigilante on her own, as well as that whatever two favors she owes that dude, and what that could, obviously the backlash that will eventually come from that. But obviously, they're going to be keeping a keen eye. Like I said, I just don't know whether it's just going to be the mayor or whether it's going to be... I feel like the mayor is going to back down, but he is going to keep his eye out. But I feel like maybe not nearly... He's probably not going to be nearly as vigilant as Scott is. Side note, I've got to figure out where I know him from. I haven't looked him up. Side note, ended up finding out he's an Australian, which I was like, there you go again. I always love finding out people putting on American accents, dude. I can't get enough of that. I literally mention it all the time. I can't help it. But yeah, I had to look a little bit more into it, but it's like I know him from something. I've seen that actor in something, but I just can't place it. Maybe by next episode I'll know what it is, but like I'm a little confused too. That's another thing. Maybe I misinterpreted, because I thought like the reason why they split was because infidelity reasons on Scott's part. Maybe I misheard that whole reasoning why, like, Murphy was like her and Scott kind of split. Like, obviously, like, I remember, like, I definitely remember her being like, she was treated more like eye candy. I mean, arm candy is what she was saying, like, because basically him being connected to, obviously, the police world and her being well, I think it was like he's a cop and she's a cop, and it just makes it fit like, oh, the perfect police family situation. And for her, she felt like she was more like alone just so that he needed her just so that he could further his own career, kind of putting up this front of like the perfect family, I'm guessing. So, but I could have sworn she was talking about kind of infidelity, but I guess it's like, oh, you talking, I guess he was talking about the fact is that she puts her job first, and she's almost like, wait, are you serious? Like, like, I think that's what she was about to get into. I definitely want to find out more about this whole circumstance, like why they ended up the way they did, and is how far is Scott willing to go? Like, you can't say it's professional. Like, the looks on your eyes, like, anytime you see Gideon and Murphy together, it's like there's nothing there. It does make you wonder, does her mom want there to be something there? Because she's bringing up the fact is that, oh, what does Gideon think about her situation? She's like, what, you're calling him Gideon now? She's like, yeah, for one, he likes my cooking, so that makes us friends. It's like, okay. She's like, I can call him Gideon because he's not my boss. Really like him. I really like Murphy's mom. I hope we get to see more of her, just not just like stuff every once in a while. I don't know. I just like her personality. But another side of this episode also dealt with Cobbs and Reyes. Basically, obviously trying to bolster the district's situation, be like, oh, like, kind of show like, hey, we're doing some good work here. They were supposed to hunt down a fugitive. His name is Reggie. Obviously, at first, they're kind of like, oh, this guy's probably not a fugitive, nothing to worry about. Turns out, obviously, he immediately starts running. They start looking into him. For once you learn a little bit more about Cobbs, you end up learning that basically, because he brings up the fact that Reggie worked at it's kind of like an old folks home, essentially kind of a similar circumstance to that. And he's like, oh yeah, he brings up the fact is of his dad. Because he assumes the worst, and Reggie is like, oh, Reggie's stealing medicine from this place, and he's going to be selling it on the streets, and those people who here are in desperate need of that medicine are not getting it. Because basically brings up his own dad's situation. He put his dad in one of those facilities. Turns out the place was a scam. His dad was slowly dying because he wasn't getting the medicine he needed because people who were working there were too busy in the back getting high. It was kind of an interesting situation, like the whole rundown, because basically you have Cobbs being very... Reyes kind of wants to kind of see things a little bit differently, but it's like Cobb's kind of shutting him down, like, we should check out there. Well, of course we should check out there, you idiot. It's like the fact that, have you not even ever seen a cop show or anything before? Kind of, obviously because Reyes is the rookie, so, but it's kind of like, even Reyes is kind of like, maybe things aren't clear cut, but Cobbs is kind of a situation where it's like Cobbs is kind of set in his way. He's been a cop for a while, so it's a situation where it's like you become a little more jaded. You kind of see the worst in people even before you really give them a chance. It's like you see this certain thing about him, the fact that he's running and everything. It's like obviously an innocent man wouldn't run, but obviously there's more to the story. But immediately Cobbs had already like wrote him off, being like, oh yeah, obviously he's off selling to homeless people and stuff like. Turns out what he's doing is giving them medicine and food, because it turns out the whole situation about why he was kind of a quote-unquote fugitive in the first place is because he stole some AIDS medicine that people were just going to throw away anyway, and he was basically stealing it and dishing it out, and that's why he ended in the circumstances he has, changed his name and everything. He just wants to help people out. So now it puts him in an awkward situation, because it's like, yeah, he's a fugitive and everything. He's a bad, quote-unquote bad guy, but is he really a bad guy? Like, all he did was steal some medicine to help some people out. And it's like, did we really have to turn him in? He wanted to talk to Conrad, but the lady he was talking to was like, yo, what did Conrad say? He's like, arrest him and then bring his tail in. And so Reyes was kind of like, oh man, we should probably check the perimeter. And Cobb's like, yep, that's a good idea, rookie. And obviously like saying like, oh, I guess our back's turned. If something were to happen while our back's turned, like if you were to get away, I guess that'd be kind of tough luck. And he got away. And even Conrad's like, how the hell did he get away? He's like, sorry, we were checking the perimeter because we felt like our lives were in danger. But we're sorry for letting you down. But he's like, oh well, it was just kind of an interesting situation. It is kind of like obviously from a police standpoint, you're kind of like, you shouldn't let bad guys get away you shouldn't let personal feelings kind of interfere with you doing your job. Scott, I know, just saying. But the fact is that, it's not like he was doing heavy illegal stuff. It's not like he was running a drug business. It's not like he was like making a profit off this. He was stealing it just to help people. It's a situation of like doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, which is kind of a running theme. Obviously, I'm recording this before I do Supergirl, but that was kind of a running element in episode 2. But nevertheless, it's kind of that situation. So it's like I wonder will that come back to haunt them too. Like I said, this whole situation, like will that come back to haunt them now? I think it's just also a little character development too, like. Because obviously the main cops we've always dealt with is obviously Cobbs Conrad, Murphy, Brandt, and Goss are kind of the ones we've mainly dealt with, and now I guess it is expanding upon that a little bit more now, and also giving a little more backstory to them and kind of like obviously learning about Cobb's dad situation and everything. So, but also see that, also learning that there is more to every story, so don't just assume that you know everything just because of your past experience. Your past experiences don't necessarily mean, because it was almost like a comparison of like Reyes being like the bright-eyed new cop, not being able to see what, a grizzled veteran in a kind of sense. I mean, I don't know if I can really use the term grizzled veteran, because I don't know if he's been on the job a lot longer than Reyes or has been or not. But it's a situation of someone's had the job for a while, like I said before, more of a jaded type of situation, like you just assume the worst. So very interesting storyline, a very good episode overall, and I'm very interested to see how things play out going forward. I'm wondering will that Robert situation come up in the future, because the fact is he went to MIT and everything. Part of me was actually wondering, is Gideon going to help out with the Maya situation? I mean, I don't know how he'd necessarily be able to help out, but I thought maybe he would, and maybe he'd be able to offer Robert a job to be like, oh, maybe we'll see Robert more often now, like kind of like Pete, helping out with the inventions and stuff like that. So very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.